Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I am Dr. Kelly Livingston, and today we're talking about one of the most overlooked foundations of hormone health, mental clarity, and long-term healing, and that is blood sugar dysregulation. We're not just talking about diabetes or calories in or out. We're talking about the daily rhythm of glucose and insulin that underlies so many of the symptoms that I see in practice, especially in women navigating perimenopause and menopause, burnout, or chronic stress. If you've been struggling with anxiety, insomnia, PMS, fatigue, brain fog, inflammation, or hormonal fluctuations, then this episode is for you. Why does blood sugar matter? Why do I want to talk about this so much? Well, blood sugar is not just a nutritional issue. It's a nervous system issue. Every time that your blood sugar crashes, your body perceives that as a threat, as danger. It's going to spike cortisol to rescue you, essentially. And when cortisol rises, everything else, your thyroid, your estrogen, your progesterone, is going to take a back seat. I've talked about this in previous episodes, how if your blood sugar drops, so say you haven't eaten, or say you go to bed and you're sleeping and you're not eating and your blood sugar drops, what can happen is that your body will make cortisol to pull sugar from the liver through a process called gluconeogenesis. So now you have more sugar in your bloodstream. And this dance of up, down, cortisol and sugar is going to happen every time that your blood sugar drops. So cortisol is really, really important to blood sugar. And I just wanted to open our talk today with that mention. So keep in mind cortisol this whole time as I'm speaking about blood sugar, okay? In my practice, I often see women who are not diabetic and not technically pre-diabetic, but they have every single sign of blood sugar dysregulation. And as you know, I've talked so much about this in my episodes around labs. There are optimal ranges, and then there are just the general ranges that are given on your blood work. So you might think you don't have a blood sugar dysregulation issue, but you actually do. So some of the signs of this are that you might be waking up at 3 a.m. So when that cortisol gets recruited to pull sugar into our system, that will wake you up in the middle of the night. Where maybe you can't focus or get going in the morning without coffee. Maybe you get hangry between meals, or you crash hard in the afternoon after you've had your lunch, especially if your lunch is heavy in carbohydrates and doesn't have any protein or fat. You might feel wired, then tired, or maybe your anxiety gets worse when you skip meals or you fast for too long. Also, if you crave carbs or sugar when you're overwhelmed, an emotional eater, very often this is related to our blood sugar. What's happening here is that the terrain is inflamed, undernourished, and dysregulated. And blood sugar is the driver that I think not enough people are talking about. And when we think about mood and mood fluctuations, which is something that a lot of women are struggling with in perimenopause and menopause, it's important to remember that when your blood sugar drops too low, your brain interprets this as danger. So you might feel irritable, panicky, dizzy, lightheaded, shaky, or even tearful and emotionally dysregulated. And then maybe you go and you grab something sweet and it swings back up. Maybe you've even had caffeine, which increases cortisol, and now insulin comes rushing in, and then you're going to crash again. So this roller coaster can mimic anxiety, depression, even panic disorder. When I'm working with a woman that has panic disorder, one of the first things I look at is her blood sugar regulation abilities. In functional psychiatry and naturopathic mental health, we always consider the gut brain axis. You know, that's pillar one of the vital spirit method. But here's the piece that most people are missing, and that's the blood sugar gut nervous system connection. When blood sugar is unstable, the gut becomes inflamed. When blood sugar is unstable, the entire microbiome is shifting, favoring dysbiosis and candida. We've talked about this before. Leaky gut is going to increase. Histamine intolerance starts showing up, and vagal tone drops, meaning you're not digesting, not resting, not regulating, and not healing. So yes, blood sugar is metabolic. When we have blood sugar issues, we're going to tend to struggle with weight and metabolism, but it's also mental, it's hormonal, and it's a spiritual issue, as everything is in holistic medicine. We've always got to talk about the mind, body, and spirit component. Because when your blood sugar is swinging, you cannot access safety. Your body doesn't feel safe. And without safety, remember, the body won't heal. And I'm sorry, but if you're hangry, if you're anxious, if you have insomnia, there's no way that you're able to even have the resources or energy to have some of those deeper conversations around what your life's purpose is, or what these messages are from your spirit or from your soul, right? If they're truly physical blood sugar dysregulation imbalances, we've got to address that first. Now let's connect some of the dots with blood sugar and perimenopause. As estrogen begins to decline in your 40s, insulin sensitivity also declines. Estrogen is actually protective against insulin resistance. So without it, your body becomes more reactive to glucose. And that means more fat storage, more inflammation, and more fatigue. This is why so many women gain belly weight or start having cholesterol and blood pressure issues around this time of life, even when their diet has not changed. And if you layer in stress, sleep deprivation, or overexercising and undereating, now you've got high cortisol, insulin dysregulation, and blood sugar all fighting for dominance, and your sex hormones take a hit. So remember, if we're making excess cortisol, we're not going to be making our sex hormones. And this is why I will tell women, if you want to balance your hormones, start with your blood sugar. Remember, step one in the gut-brain axis is recognizing and removing sources of inflammation and blood sugar dysregulation. If you want to heal your mood, start with your blood sugar. If you want to support your gut, start with your blood sugar. Blood sugar regulation and a focus on this is truly part of terrain healing and is foundational to all of the work that I do with women. Without it, no supplement or protocol are going to achieve the results that you're looking for. So now let's talk about labs. So outside of some of the symptoms that might give me clues that a woman's blood sugar is an issue, you might be wondering, okay, how do I know this is a problem for me, right? Especially if your doctor says your labs look fine. But here's the truth. You can have normal glucose on your lab. So when you run a metabolic panel with your physician and you see your fasting glucose, that can look normal. You might even have a normal hemoglobin A1C, and you can still have significant blood sugar dysregulation throughout the day. So here are some of the labs that I run for my patients when we want to look deeper at the terrain and how blood sugar is impacting their overall health. So yes, we will run a fasting insulin. And this is sometimes the canary in the coal mine. Ideal range is 2 to 6, and over 8 suggests insulin resistance is already starting. Now, labs won't flag that necessarily, so you need to, number one, ask for a fasting insulin, and then number two, know how to read that lab. Next is hemoglobin A1C. Most doctors are happy if it's under 5.6%, but for optimal brain and hormone health, I like to see that between 5 and 5.3. This is very commonly something that we're tracking in the first 3 months of working together. I often joke with patients that I just need 3 months to balance hemoglobin A1C and cholesterol, and I'll definitely have an episode on cholesterol. Next is fasting glucose. Less useful on its own, in my opinion, but I do like it between a 75 and an 85 ideally. If your fasting glucose is creeping above a 90 regularly and you're symptomatic of blood sugar dysregulation, then we might take a closer look at the role that blood sugar is playing in your symptom picture and in your overall health experience. You can go even a step further and look at your HOMA-IR. This is a calculated index using fasting glucose and insulin, and it will give you a picture of your insulin sensitivity before anything becomes a diagnosis. Again, I really recommend that you get ahead of these and start thinking about blood sugar dysregulation even before things are showing up on a lab. Next is the one that we've talked about before, and that's HSCRP, or high sensitivity C reactive protein, because blood sugar swings drive inflammation. And HSCRP is an inflammatory marker that I track every year in patients. Ideally, you want that under a 1, the lower the better. And next is a lipid panel. So usually patients think, oh, lipids, fats, cholesterol, right? But especially triglycerides and HDL are going to be related to your blood sugar. A high triglyceride to HDL ratio over 2 to 1 is another sign of insulin resistance. Even if cholesterol is normal, this ratio tells me a lot. And one of the things I counsel my patients around is that triglycerides, and especially high triglycerides, are a sign of excess sugar in the diet. That's one of the first things that we're going to talk about when those are high. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can certainly look into something called a CGM, or a continuous glucose monitor. This is definitely a great tool for data lovers. If you're really curious how stress is impacting your blood sugar, or sleep, certainly how certain meals are, you might have a lot of aha moments by looking at the data from a continuous glucose monitor. I do find this helpful in patients that are willing to do that. And this is really functional terrain testing, right? We're not just asking, do you have a disease that we need to do something about? But we're asking, is your body under stress? How can we prevent a disease from developing? And when we find dysregulation here in these labs and in your experience as a patient, it's a really powerful invitation to stabilize that blood sugar, nourish, and start the healing process. So what can you actually do today to start stabilizing your blood sugar? I really find that we overcomplicate things so much in health and wellness, and the basic strategies and foundational strategies for creating the conditions for health around blood sugar are things that anyone can do. You don't even need to know your labs necessarily to make these changes. So number one is have protein and a healthy fat with every meal. One of the first things you can do is to never grab a carb unopposed. So don't grab a piece of toast or an apple or a banana, certainly not a sugary treat, without having a protein and a healthy fat, and ideally fiber before that, but we'll get to fiber in just a minute. So you also want to think about starting your day with 20 to 30 grams of protein. So again, not just fruit, not a smoothie without protein, not coffee alone, which will spike your cortisol and then spike your blood sugar and then crash it. So you can think eggs, leftover fish, hemp seeds. Hemp seeds are one of my favorites. A savory breakfast bowl. Protein really anchors your blood sugar for hours and really gets your blood sugar where we want it to be for the rest of the day. And then you want to eat within about 90 minutes of waking. So yes, sometimes I use therapeutic fasting or intermittent fasting, but when I'm first starting to work on blood sugar regulation, I want to make sure that patients are eating and setting their circadian rhythm, their cortisol curve in a healthy way with protein. And that's going to also prevent that mid-morning crash that so many of my patients are pushing through with that second cup of coffee. I'm guilty of this sometimes too, right? It's sometimes easier. And then really don't fast if you're already burnt out. So having some information around your stress levels, around your cortisol curve, and just knowing, am I burnt out right now, right? Intermittent fasting, again, it's kind of all over the place. It is something I use, but if your adrenals are depleted and if you're in perimenopause, then fasting can actually worsen those blood sugar swings. So we really want to focus on nourishment and blood sugar stability as a priority. And then I would definitely give you bonus points for movement after meals. One of the easiest ways that we can stabilize our blood sugar is to get our body moving within an hour to an hour and a half after eating. So get up, move your body after lunch, get up, move your body after dinner, take a little walk around the block. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you're going to stabilize your blood sugar with this strategy. And it can be really profound. You will see that stabilize your blood sugar on labs if you start incorporating that lifestyle strategy. And you can certainly consider some supplementation as well. So I'll go over some of the supplements that I might consider, but really, really remember that lifestyle strategies are the most important foundation. So don't grab an unopposed sugar, right? Have protein, healthy fat with any sugar. And if you are going to have that treat and have that piece of cake or ice cream or something celebratory, enjoy it. Obviously, life is about enjoying these moments, not having those things maybe every day if we have blood sugar issues. But if you are going to do that, then definitely have fiber before you have sugar. That's going to keep the blood sugar stable and not spiking as high and therefore not dropping as low. But for those needing additional support, I might use a blood sugar nutrient blend or herbal blend. So I might be using things like chromium or cinnamon. I've definitely used berberine for many, many years to help with stabilizing blood sugar. That can help with insulin sensitivity and metabolic health. I certainly will recommend additional fiber in the diet. So on top of your whole foods and your veggies and your fruits, we might use targeted prebiotic blends that will slow glucose absorption and really feed the gut microbiome. I also might use some cell salts like calc phos or nat phos, which are going to gently support cellular energy and sugar metabolism at a tissue level. And we just did an episode on gemotherapy. I might weave in some gemotherapy like fig bud or ficus for stress-related cravings, and maybe cornice to help balance glycemic terrain, really more on a gentle, energetic level. Now, of course, any therapy that we're selecting should be based on a root cause perspective. It's going to look different for everyone. There will be different reasons why your blood sugar is dysregulated. And blood sugar dysregulation is not always driven by carbs, right? So there might be underlying thyroid dysfunction. Go back and listen to the episodes on running a full thyroid panel. You might be struggling with adrenal burnout or a dysregulated cortisol pattern. You might have chronic inflammation, which will impact your metabolism and your blood sugar, perimenopausal hormone shifts, or even gut dysbiosis or other environmental triggers. So if you've tried clean eating and you're still crashing, anxious, struggling with brain fog, it's definitely not your fault. You might not have looked further into blood sugar dysregulation, and you might need a more nuanced plan that really supports your full terrain. So healing is never one size fits all, especially at Roots Deep Medicine and through the Vital Spirit method. And certainly never one size fits all through perimenopause and menopause, because we all have different reasons that stress might be impacting our blood sugar, right? So when so many systems are at play, we don't just treat the blood sugar on the lab, we're really treating you as the patient. And I go into more detail around these strategies in what I teach in the 21-day gut healing reset. So you can be sure to check that out. And I absolutely incorporate blood sugar strategies in the Seeds of Health journal that I have. So you can download that for free, because healing the gut, rebalancing the nervous system, it all requires your blood sugar to be steady. Your terrain really depends on steady blood sugar. It's one of the foundational pieces when we start working together. So if you've been working on healing on your own, if you've been trying protocols, trying diets, adding exercise to your routine, and you still feel like you're hitting a wall, especially with weight, maybe you've even worked on your hormones and you're still hitting a wall, start to think more about your blood sugar, because blood sugar is not just about sugar. It's about your body feeling safe. And when the body feels safe, the body heals. So if this episode resonated, please share it with a friend who might benefit. And if you can, go in and leave a review. I think that's one of the ways that more women can learn about this. And make sure that you download and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper, you can grab my free vagal tone guide. You can join the 21-day gut healing reset, and you can download the free Seeds of Health and make your blood sugar regulation a priority this week. So make sure you don't just have those unopposed carbs. And if you do, have protein and fat and fiber with them, and move your body after meals. Even those most basic changes can have such a profound impact on how you feel throughout the day. And if you're someone who heard some of the blood sugar dysregulation symptoms and you thought that might be me, well, you can go back and look at the labs to run during perimenopause and menopause episodes. And you can certainly ask your doctor to run some more advanced or in depth looks into your blood sugar. I promise your nervous system will thank you. And I hope that you enjoyed this and you join us next time. Have a great day.